Shalom uvracha. Today we like to learn about שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום. Reading twice the weekly portion of the Torah, and one time the תרגום אונקלוס, the translation on the parasha. The halacha in the Shulchan Aruch is brought down in סימן רפ"ה, and it is a Gemara in brachot. The Gemara in brachot, דף ח' עמוד פצס, לעולם ישלים אדם פרשיותיו עם הציבור, שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום ואפילו עטרות ודיבון. A person should complete his weekly portion together with everybody else reading, even those words that you don't have a translation like עטרות ודיבון, which are names, you should repeat saying them with the translation, with the תרגום. So you should always do that week by week. You should never miss. לעולם ישלים אדם פרשיותיו, complete the weekly portion עם הציבור, שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום. And then the Gemara says the bracha that one gets for doing such a thing, שכל המשלים פרשיותיו עם הציבור, שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום, מאריכים לו ימיו ושנותיו. A person that completes his weekly portion, his life is extended and is completed. To explain what it means completed, we do find in Gemara in Yevamot that when a person is born, he has a certain amount of years and days that he should live. But if during his lifetime he sins, those time could get shortened. And over here, the Gemara says a beracha and says that one who's busy doing שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום every week, his days and years will be completed. The Gemara explains that one shouldn't think that he's losing by spending time reading שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום, which can take an hour, some people more. And with doing that, you feel that you're wasting time, because that time will get back, says the Gemara, that מאריכים לו ימיו ושנותיו, so you're not losing anything by doing so. Outlook in the Torah is you never lose anything by doing anything or spending your time or effort or money for doing mitzvot, because none of that is a loss. On the contrary, it's only a gain in this world and the next world, but even in this world, as we're explaining, because in this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does reward a person in so many good things that come as an outcome of what we do for spiritual reasons. Therefore, it says here that one should read the Torah and also the Unkulus. What's the purpose of reading Unkulus? The Levush says, in order for a person to understand what the parasha actually says. And in order to understand, you read the Unkulus. Unkulus is the translation that explains to you and gives you insight of what goes on in the parasha. This is how it's brought down in Chafetz Chaim Likutei Morim Perek Hey, that the reason for that reading of the translation is that a person should be able to be mitbonen, look into the parasha, understand and relate to the parasha. So it's a great thing that a person could read the parasha, know what goes in the parasha, read the Unkulus, understand the Unkulus. Not only that, he gets to understand the Aramaic language once he does Unkulus on a weekly basis. And that's very important. You might ask, why do I need to know who speaks to me ever in Aramaic? The answer is, the Gemara is written in Aramaic, and every person should know how to learn Gemara, because that's the base of the Torah shebe'al peh. So you want to know how to read Gemara, understand Gemara. How would you do that? If you read Unkulus on a regular basis, you'll be getting a lot of understanding of the language itself, understanding of what the parasha speaks about, and some insight of perushim. And therefore it says in the halacha, in the Shulchan Aruch, סימן רפ"ה, אף על פי שאדם שומע כל התורה כולה כל השבת בציבור, חייב לקרוא לעצמו בכל שבוע פרשת אותו השבוע, שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום, אפילו עטרות ודיבון, which means even though you're going to read the weekly portion with the Baal Koreh, you're going to hear it from him on Shabbat morning where you go to shul, but still there is a mitzvah to hear that and to also say the שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום yourself. That's what this halacha is about. And it is brought down here how one should actually perform that mitzvah. And there is a machloket. The Shla says that one needs to read the parasha twice and then the Targum. What does it mean, the parasha? Simple understanding, the Mepharshim understand that you go up to either stumot or ptuchot, which means the parasha itself, you don't read the whole entire parashat HaShavua, but rather you go up to the portion that you see in the Chumash. It says Ptucha or Tzuma, it says Pei or Samech. In the Torah itself, you'll have space between one parasha and another parasha, space of 9 letters, and that actually gives you space between one parasha and another parasha. You could stop there, read it second time, and read the Targum. This is how the Shla says to do it. This is also how the Marshal says to do it, but others argued. Lechem Chamudot says you should do one pasuk at a time, each pasuk by itself. So you read the pasuk twice, and then the Unkulus, and when you finish reading the whole Parashat HaShavua, at the end, since you don't want to finish with Unkulus, you don't want to finish with translation, you read again one more pasuk. That pasuk, that last pasuk, you read it one more time in Lashon HaKodesh. This is also how it's brought down in the Ari, and when a person should actually do that, some say that there is an inyan to actually read it a little bit different. You read the pasuk, you read the translation, and then you go back to read the pasuk. So it's Shnaim Mikra, but really Shnaim Mikra that you do once the Mikra, once the Targum, and then again the Mikra. So there is a machloket if that should be done this way. Chutshani writes that Chazon Ish used to do it that way. When is it that a person should read the Shnai Mikra Ve'achad Targum? Well, it says in the Shulchan Aruch that what you need to do is finish the parasha together with the tzibur. That's how we learn also in the Gemara, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch brings down. Mitzvah min hamuvchar she'yashlim ota kodem she'yochal b'Shabbat. The mitzvah min hamuvchar is to finish the Shnai Mikra Ve'achad Targum before you're eating your meal, your morning meal, which means when you come in the morning to shul, after you finish shul, if it's way before midday, that is when you read Shnai Mikra Ve'achad Targum. But if it's almost midday chatzot, you don't want to read then, because then you're delaying the seudah, and you're not allowed to delay the seudah after chatzot, after midday, because that's considered fasting. So therefore, one should definitely go and eat the seudah before chatzot. If a person has the time beforehand, he should read then. But definitely one can read before Shacharit or on Friday. This is the way, by the way, the Arzei was reading. The Arzei, after Friday morning tefillah, he used to go to a place that has a Sefer Torah, take out the Sefer Torah, and read from the Sefer Torah itself, and somebody would come with him and read for him from a Chumash, the Unkulus. Some Mekubalim say that it's better to read after midday on Friday. But according to the Maaseh Rav of the Arizal, he did it early in the morning, right after tefillah. So that's the way it seems like one should do, but it doesn't have to. One could read the parasha every day of the week. Each day the aliyah that and go along with that. So that means that, let's say, on Sunday he would read up to Sheni. On the next day, Monday, you could read up to Shlishi, and this way it would go along until Erev Shabbat, and then finish everything by then. But the Shulchan Aruch says that as long as you finish everything before the Seudah, this is actually how it is brought down in the Midrash, that one should finish before the Seudah. And it is what's brought down that it is mitzvah min hamuvchar, kodem she'ochal b'Shabbat, but if you didn't do it by then, one is still able to do it until mincha on Shabbat. What happens on mincha on Shabbat itself? Mincha is when you start already the parasha for next week, the weekly portion for next week. That's what they read in the shuls by mincha. So therefore that belongs already to the next week. So one should try to finish before mincha. If you didn't do it by then, the Shulchan Aruch brings also another option to be able to read it until Wednesday, because there is such a thing in halacha that Wednesday already separates the week. Up to Wednesday, it belongs to the previous week. Wednesday already starts getting the light, spiritual light of Shabbat for the next week. So therefore, one should read by Wednesday, finish before Wednesday, if he didn't do it on time, and if he missed that as well, he should read up to Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, that this is where we finish the entire year, the Sefer Torah by itself. Now, if one missed a parasha, let's say last week, and he needs to read also this week and complete last week, it should be in order. Therefore, he should read last week's and then read this week. It should be read in order. When one reads the שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום, משנה ברורה brings down that it's a very very big מעלה, או דבר טוב מאוד, שלא יפסיק בשניים מקרא ואחד תרגום על שום דבר. Should not stop in the middle of reading שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום. Now obviously, if you're reading, as we said before, each day you read one aliyah, so once you finish this aliyah, you definitely could do whatever you want. That's not the way we are explaining that shouldn't be stopped at all. Rather, it means within that reading you shouldn't stop, and also if you read all at once, you shouldn't stop then in the middle of the reading. Cham Ovadia says that is only true if you don't have to stop for a Dvar Mitzvah. If you have a Dvar Mitzvah, or definitely if you hear Kaddish, Kedusha, Brachot, you say Amen. Obviously, for all these things, one should definitely read. You should not read the Targum before the Mikra. This is how the Mishnah Berurah says, לא יקרא תרגום תחילה ואחר כך מקרא, אלא יקרא לכתחילה שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום. Don't mix first to say the Targum and then the Mikra. It is brought down in the Halacha, a very interesting and important thing. אם למד הפרשה בפירוש רש"י, חשוב כמו תרגום. One, there is a machloket, rishonim. If one that reads Rashi is as chashuv, as important as reading the Unkulus itself. And the Biur Halacha brings down the Beit Yosef that explains that the Smag discussed with his rabbis what should do one if he wants to read Rashi and understands Rashi. Rashi has much more understanding, as the Mishnah Berurah explains, that the Targum has a ma'ala that it was given in Har Sinai, and he explains each and every word and translate it. That's the ma'ala of the Targum. But the advantage of reading Rashi, יש לו מעלה שהוא מפרש את העניין על מדרשי חז"ל יותר מן התרגום. Rashi brings you the insight of Chazal and the drash that Chazal gave you on the Targum, on the parasha. Therefore, that has a big ma'ala. So which one you should read? The Smag was discussing this with his rabbis, and they came out and said שהפירוש מועיל יותר מן התרגום. הובאו דבריו גם כן במורדכי, הגאות מורדכי, והבית יוסף wrote on this, מי הוא סמג והגאות wrote, נראה לרי ורב אברהם ורב נתרונאי, שכתבו שהתרגום זכה מפני שניתן בסיני. The Targum has a bigger ma'ala, it was given in Har Sinai, and therefore it has a bigger ma'ala. Because of that, says the Shulchan Aruch, that although one should read the Targum, that seems to be the requirement, there is also a big ma'ala to read Rashi, and therefore ירא שמיים יקרא תרגום וגם פירוש רש"י. ירא שמיים should do both, and this way you would say both opinion and gains both advantages, that the Targum was given from Har Sinai, as the Mishnah Berurah explains, and explains each and every word, and the Rashi explains to you Pi Midrashei Chazal. That's very important. If one wants to read different language instead of Targum, says the Mishnah Berurah, he can't do it. אם קרא בשאר לעז, שהוא מפרש רק את המילות לחוד, לא יצא ידי חובתו במקום תרגום. The Targum also explains the words, not only translates. So if you try to translate to a different language, you're only getting a translation and not the explanation that the Targum Unkelus gives you. Therefore, that's not sufficient. But Rashi, that you're learning from the Chumash, if one doesn't understand at all, he could use a different language in order to explain to him what Rashi says. And it's brought down from Moshe Feinstein that when you read Rashi in English, that could take care of doing the Unkulus instead of doing Unkulus. So there is such a ma'ala. Although Unkulus would be better than reading Rashi, as Avraham Kanievsky says that it's better to read the Unkulus than to read Rashi. We explained before, Unkulus is a complete requirement. Rashi should be read, it's a good thing, and Yireh Shamayim should do both. If one doesn't understand Rashi in its the way it's written. It just doesn't get to understand them. So he could do that with the English, and could be that the English Rashi now gets such a big ma'ala that it's taken care also of the Targum. That seems to be the understanding in Rav Moshe Feinstein. Now, as we explained before, the ma'ala of reading the whole thing with Rashi and the Targum is to come out and understand what is the parasha, what we saying in the parasha. And therefore the Chafetz Chaim says in Likutei Amarim that the reason that you read Shnayim Mikra ve'achad Targum is in order for you to be able to look inside the parasha, understand it, get the insight, and you come out ready for Shabbat with the entire parasha, understanding the perush and the stories in the parasha and the midrashei Chazal in it, which is very important to do. Can one read the parasha Shnayim Mikra ve'achad Targum while he's listening to the Baal Koreh reading the parasha on Shabbat morning tefillah? Says the Shulchan Aruch, יכול לקרוא הפרשה שניים מקרא ואחד תרגום בשעת קריאת התורה. At the time that the Chazan, the Baal Koreh, reads the Torah, you could also read with him quietly. But there is a discussion in the Mishnah Berurah if that's something that one should do. He brings down that the Magen Avraham from the Shlas was machmir. He said that it's not, it should not be done, because at the time that the Shliach Tzibur read, you should be listening to the Baal Koreh and not saying anything at that time. But if you say it quietly, could be just saying it quietly and listening at the same time, that doesn't interrupt in any way, and that will be permitted. This is how the Mishnah Berurah ends up saying. So therefore, according to that, one would read the parasha entirely, say the unkulus, and then hear it one time from the Baal Koreh while he says it. So then he has already